The Friday Night Lights in Austin, Texas, a weekly tradition in the fall. A tradition which includes 4 state championships won by Austin ISD schools in the 20th century, one by Austin High during World War II, and a trio by Reagan High School between 1967 and 1970. But this was once the home of a 4-time state championship football program. Leroy Bookman III played on one of those championship teams.
Winning was a tradition at Anderson. What I remember a lot about when it was my time to play was the fact that how difficult and what a privilege it was to play for Anderson.
Before integration, the old Anderson High School Yellow Jackets football program was a dominant state powerhouse. 4 state title gold balls were won by the Yellow Jackets between 1942 and 1961, a program the folks on the east side took great pride in.
I mean, if you look at some of the films, the old films, you would see people standing around the field. Everybody turned out for it. It was a complete crowd. The stadium was full. It was completely full. And you see spectators and everything all on the hillside. You see kids playing. So it was a family atmosphere because everybody wanted to be a Yellow Jacket. And my father confirmed that the 44 team did play Texas, a practice team, did practice against the University of Texas in 1944 and beat them 6-0 on Texas practice field.
There is a lengthy list of former Yellow Jackets who extended their football careers, including a man known for his vicious hits, NFL Hall of Famer Dick Night Train Lane, and a man who played a key role in the Dallas Cowboys win in Super Bowl 12.
We're the original Yellow Jackets. Don't get it twisted.
Thomas Hollywood Henderson attended and played for Old Anderson for his first 2 years before transferring to Douglas High School in Oklahoma City.
I lived there 50 years ago.
But Hollywood is prideful of his roots to this historic program which played in the old Prairie View Interscholastic League.
Did it put Austin on the map as far as high school football goes because there was such a rich tradition here on top of this hill?
It really was, and I really didn't realize the history of it because I kind of left Austin when I was about 16 years old. But since then, educating myself on the PVIL and all the great championships and the Texas relays and the state meet and all the things I saw when I was here, like the greatest athlete in the world went to school here. His name is John Harvey. Yeah. Now, John Harvey will argue with you that I am the greatest. So there's a history here that needs to be preserved, and I want to be a part of that.
Hollywood has played a significant role in the preservation of Old Anderson's history, a school which closed its doors in 1971 due to a federal judge's order as part of desegregation, an unwelcome decision by many, including former Yellow Jacket football players.
It was a bad feeling. That's all I could tell you about it. It wasn't a good feeling at all.
2 years later, in 1973, the new and current L.C. Anderson High School opened in Northwest Austin. However, it was not a popular decision. Old Anderson's history, colors, and the Yellow Jacket was not a part of the new Anderson. Former Yellow Jacket great Ed Roby described that transition.
But at that particular time, people just didn't have the foresight to see that, They were upset about the school being closed, but they didn't argue the fact that, well, okay, let's close it, but let's bring everything from the old school here.
42 years later, the current Anderson High School, the home of the Trojans, has an area in the front of the school honoring Old Anderson's history. Bridging the gap between the two Anderson communities, an initiative current Anderson principal Donna Hauser started along with the Trojans head football coach Jeff Rhodes.
The coach and the principal had nothing to do with the school closing in 1971. However, they recognize there's a lot of history there that hasn't been told, and there's a lot of connection there with the school by way of name recognition, and so what they're trying to do is to partner with us, if you will.
Which leads to the final chapter of this story about bridging the gap. The current Anderson football team paid a visit to this field, Yellow Jackets Field, and they toured this exhibit at the George Washington Carver Museum honoring Old Anderson High School.
The old L.C. Anderson High School folks They're very humble, and they show up every time you ask them to, and they have something that I want in us, a championship spirit.
Austin ISD Athletics Director Lil Anderson has led the charge in renovating Yellow Jackets Field for use in the future for AISD's sub-varsity and varsity football games, a field the current Anderson High School will play a preseason scrimmage on in August.
There's just so much tradition here, so much history at this location that a lot of people will get a chance to kind of dig into that and find out more about it as more games are played here and as we kind of unravel a lot of the history here.
And this is what I asked Lil. Do you think that that is fitting? Because I do believe they will learn about the history of Old Anderson, and to be able to play on this field, do you think that's a stretch for me thinking that, or do you think there is some truth to that?
You know, I think there's a wonderful thing about it. It's almost like a gesture of healing, because the only reason that Anderson High School, now they're the Trojans, but the Yellow Jackets were closed in 1971 was because of integration.
Right.
And I think it was the mistake of the century for the East Austin community and for the head coach now of Anderson High School to want to come here and play an exhibition, if you will, to be here, I think is really significant. I think it's very sensitive to the old Anderson alumnus, and I'm going to be here.
The same place the winningest coach in UT football history once watched games on Friday nights decades ago.
And people like Coach Royal and the Longhorns, they would sit on the hill and watch the game. So, you know, it might be that type of atmosphere out there. I mean, football in East Austin back again. That'll be great. Parking's going to be a bug up, but that's okay.
On August 15th, old and current Anderson will be unified. Sean Clinch, KView Sports.